Today on the Crisscross Cinema Podcast, the one that started it all, Strangers on a Train, and the movie it directly inspired, Throw Momma from a Train, on the Crisscross Cinema Podcast.
Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all, never saw each other before. They swap murders. Crisscross.
Wilson! I'm sorry, Wilson! A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the Crisscross Cinema Podcast, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections that elude the casual eye, try and spot them along with us. Today, a Hitchcock thriller and its comedy spin-off, 1951's Strangers on a Train and 1987's Throw Momma from a Train. Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, a massive Hitchcock fan.
I'm Mark Klobus, who is reconsidering his plans to travel on a train sometime soon.
Hi, I'm Tommy Staley, currently author, former teacher, and many other things, and I just love movies, all kind of movies. I'm excited about today.
Cool. If you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Crisscross and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRANSCEND Entertainment. Today, just as always, we'll review our two films, and then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. But first, Mark, what media has crossed your path?
Well, in addition to continuing my viewing of the old Columbo TV show, I'm trying to get caught up on Loki Season 2 before the Deadpool movie comes out this summer, because my son is pushing me to do that because he's really excited for the Deadpool movie. He's like, Dad, we got to watch it. So we're one episode away, and I have to say how well it's fascinating to see what they do in that show. And I'm marveling at why it is, no pun intended, why it is that Marvel can't get that right. You know, what they do in Loki with a combination of the storytelling, the character development, it's all there. And it's what really seems to be lacking in so much of their property over the past few years. And yet, you know, this show, it seems to come so naturally. I mean, maybe it's Tom Hiddleston, maybe it's, you know, the ensemble. I mean, they did rope in an Oscar-winning actor for season 2 to complement the cast. But I mean, it's just so well done. So. Yeah. Been enjoying that.
I haven't seen season 2 either, so I've got to
one episode away from finishing it, and then we'll be ready to watch Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman do their bantery thing.
Well, I agree. I'm a huge Marvel fan, though, and I haven't picked anything out of a Marvel movie that I didn't like. I think my favorites are Venom. I wish I had one of my own, and Deadpool. I like the Deadpool character, and I saw the previews of the Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds one just Tuesday of this week. We went to see Bad Boys, which I enjoyed an awfully lot. I thought it was funny, so that's the last thing I've actually seen is Bad Boys. So I recommend it. It was good.
Yeah, I want to see that. I've heard it's good. So.
It's some of it's expected, you know. I mean, you've seen their other things. You expect certain things. But I didn't think they failed. I thought they delivered, you know. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I've been watching The Acolyte. I know there's tons of hate on the internet for it, but mostly I've just found it to be mediocre. Like the thing that I got from it when I was watching it the other day was this dialogue is just not good. And so it inspired me to get writing on my El Gordito script and get specifically the dialogue parts. But, so that was a good thing that came from it. But yeah, but
you're watching, you're thinking, I can do better than this.
Yes. Yeah, basically.
Always. I've been watching a TV series too that I hope somebody else has seen because I have questions. Killing Eve with Sandra Oh
and Jodie Comer. I have that has been on my radar, but it's one of those shows that's kind of receded for me in terms of its getting to it anytime soon. Orphan Black was like that for me. It was like that was something that everyone kept saying you should watch, or Mr. Robot, and then it's just as time passed and people stopped talking about it, I'm like, I'll get to it someday. But I've heard it is a show that definitely has a pretty passionate fan base.
Yeah, I can see why. I think, though, my interest started to wane when the Sandra Oh character, she was making mistakes that a seasoned police officer, a seasoned federal, I think she is, should not be making.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of, I don't know. That's why I wanted to ask somebody that watched it what they thought about it.
I think I've expressed that as a pet peeve of mine on a couple of our episodes, where you have these smart characters who really should know better, and yet keep doing dumb things because we have to have them have plot convenience stupidity there.
Yeah.
Our Planet of the Apes episode.
Yeah.
Now, come on. I loved that movie. Oh.
Yeah, we're talking about specifically Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Don't get me started on that one.
I've got a script that I've got to have you read at some point. That's a forensic thing, and I have no idea how good it is. But
I actually have edited a couple of books for John Cohen that had some DNA references and stuff. He said, "Are you comfortable editing?" And I did, so I'll look at it and see if I can find anything wrong. Yeah, I'm pretty strong in forensics.
just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. And now our review of Strangers on a Train.
So we open at Union Station in Washington, D.C. with two men, tennis player Guy Haynes, played by Farley Granger, and spoiled rich kid Bruno Antony, played by Robert Walker, boarding the train. And I had to say this, I had never seen the movie before we agreed to do this one. And it was, I loved how Hitchcock establishes their characters right off the bat with their shoes.
Yeah.
And I actually went and did a bit of research. That Bruno has these spectator shoes, which became a thing in the 1920s and 1930s, and they give him kind of like this flamboyant air. And then you have Guy's more conventional, Oxfords. He's more of a conventional character in a lot of ways, but Guy's the celebrity. And so, Bruno sits across from him and in the observation car, and pretty soon they're chatting away, and it's fascinating to see how Bruno and Robert Walker does a really nice job with this character. He begins ingratiating himself with Guy. Oh, you're that celebrity. Oh, yeah, I hear you. He's worming his way in, and there's this question that I kept asking. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. At what point does he conceive his plot with Guy?
I don't know. As you were talking, I was thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, could it have been even before he got on the train? And did he... I mean, it just seems so very convenient, And I wondered the same thing. Yeah. When did he... I'm kind of leaning toward it was all planned in his mind.
Yeah, I can't see him doing it necessarily with Guy because I think that was coincidental. But I just had this vision of Bruno doing these train trips and just randomly approaching people. Hey, how about crisscross?
Yeah,
and they're just
how many times before that has he done this?
Yeah. Possibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just really fascinating how I mean he's weird but in a charming way, and how for some reason Guy responds to this. Maybe it's because and this is where I think you get to the idea of how you discover Bruno's a psychopath. He begins by having Guy open up about his problems, and Guy's problem is that he is in love with Anne, who is the daughter of a United States senator, lovely woman, played by Ruth Roman, but he is married to a woman named Miriam. played by Casey Rogers. And it is clear that Miriam is not a good person, that she has been stepping out, she is pregnant with someone else's child, and that he wants to be rid of Miriam, and he wants to, so he can have this life with Anne, which is, he has this career path, and you mentioned it later in the movie. He doesn't want to be a tennis player. He wants to go into politics. And marrying the daughter of a United States senator is, a great way of advancing one's career. Plus, of course, he's in love with Anne, and she's in love with him. But Miriam is this obstacle, and he's frustrated with it. And Granger does a good job of selling without overselling it. And then Bruno is able to use that to transition to talk about how he can sympathize because he's being harassed by his father, who is just horrible because he wants his son to work for a living.
Yeah. And I love, maybe my favorite Bruno line that just sticks in my head is where he's like, I really do admire people who do things.
Yes.
It's like,
and in a sense, this is the one thing he wants to do he proposes this idea, which is, it's the thing that I think is not a product just of movies. The idea that people have sometimes that baser self, that lizard brain idea of, if I could just kill that person and get them out of my way, my life would be so much easier. But then Bruno says, but then you have that problem, which is motive. When you have the motive, I mean, the finger gets pointed right at you. And then he says, and I can't tell if this is maybe Robert Walker's Limitations, an actor, or something that was planned in it. And I'm kind of lean towards the latter, because I think the way it kind of gets to that question we were just debating, which is the way he just kind of smoothly like, hey, I got this idea. We just trade murders. And that's, of course, we get the
Criss
great
Cross.
Criss Cross, exactly. So, and how it's not like you're not seeing as he's coming up with it on spots. It's kind of like it's always there, and now he's proposing it. He's found someone who might be in as bad of a situation as he is, and be as desperate for murder as he is. And you can tell Guy is just really discomfited by the suggestion. He's like, okay, this is a little weird. And he's arriving at his stop, which is this small town of Metcalf, and it's the exchange of words here. I think is just really fascinating. Guy is so relatable because he's doing, I think, what just about all of us would do in that situation, which is you're in this uncomfortable situation with a person who's making you uncomfortable, and you're going to use words as a form of socializing. So Guy's like, so Bruno's like, hey, we should crisscross, and Guy's saying, sure, whatever. And he's doing it as, what is going to get me out of this situation as quickly as possible. And Bruno is saying, oh, he's agreeing with me. So where you're having the socializing chat from Guy, Bruno is taking literally.
Seriously.
yeah.
Yes. And it's part because it's what he wants to hear. He wants to hear someone saying, hey, I want you to do this, because maybe Bruno's beginning to really feel the pressure. He wants to do this sooner rather than later. So, but Guy just wants to be rid of him, in part because he has to stop, but also because he does not want to socialize with Bruno anymore. And it's at this point that he makes this error, which ends up shadowing the entire rest of the movie, which is that he leaves his personalized cigarette lighter behind. I
love that they set that up from the beginning.
Yes.
Like he leaves the lighter behind, and then Bruno finds it, and you see that he has the lighter, and that's when he's like, crisscross. And then
I like how it's like he's about to move to return it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then he has second thoughts like, ooh, I think I'll keep this handy. And that's when he says crisscross.
And it's basically Chekhov's lighter that's going to come up later.
Yeah, Chekhov's making appearances in quite a few of our podcasts lately.
Yeah.
Chekhov's Shotgun, the last one. But Guys in Metcalf, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to me, I had mentioned that I did teach forensics to you. I was watching Bruno, and I'm thinking he's showing some of the classic mental acceptance that stalkers, when they are in a situation like that, he wants to believe that this person agrees with him, and then it becomes a fact in his mind. Oh, he agrees with me. He's going to help me. And I got really wrapped up in Bruno's character because I kept seeing these little, and I thought, is Hitchcock a stalker? Does he know, what he's doing here? But I was really more interested in Bruno's character because of the some of the classic, even facial reactions. I mean, almost like, he could tell. I mean, you could almost see like a joy in his face when he was told something that he wanted to hear. Just, kind of like, oh, yes, this is going to go
his
my way
eyes light
kind of
up.
thing.
Yeah.
So.
And he's very good at forcing people to accept him. Mm-hmm. I mean, it ultimately doesn't work in what matters most to him, but it's a behavior that, I as a person find annoying, but it makes for such a great character. And Robert Walker, who I'd only seen in one other movie that I can recall, it does such a great job of selling it. He's so plausible, this character. It's such a...
It's kind of interesting that, like you said, like if you were actually with this character, you'd drive you nuts.
Yes.
But on screen, when it's at a safe distance, it's pretty entertaining. So.
And it's also interesting how you get the impression that he is self-aware enough to where he moderates himself a little bit with Guy, worms himself in, but now he's, like that Gila monster. He's got the bite.
Right.
And he's holding on, and he's going to hold on until he gets what he wants. Guy, by contrast, he can't get what he wants, which is he wants a divorce from Miriam.
Yeah.
And he goes to the record shop where he works. Apparently,
before we get too far into this, we can't miss my favorite Hitchcock cameo. As he's getting off the train,
Yes.
Hitchcock is getting on with this giant bass.
The bass.
And it's got the same silhouette as him, and he puts it up on the train, and then he gets on.
I have to admit, from the very opening scene, I was watching the background almost as much as the main characters, waiting just for that. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I couldn't wait to see how he was going to be in this one.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Like he was very aware of his portly demeanor, and I don't know. He had that sense of humor about himself.
Do you know there's the one scene in the entire movie that was not directed by him?
No.
According to IMDb, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. It was directed by his daughter.
Oh,
Pat. Yeah, she's in the cast of this one.
And apparently he also, for whatever reason, had her direct that one scene. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah. So the implication is that Miriam lures Guy to Metcalf with the idea being that if he brings money, they'll start the divorce proceedings, which apparently she proposed at first. But the moment he hands over the money, she does the bait and switch and says, "Oh no, we're not going to do it." And she threatens him. She threatens to say that her unborn baby is his, which in America in 1950 would mean that divorce would become effectively impossible. And Guy doesn't take this news very well. And this is I find the part of the story I find a little annoying, which they have to have him constantly expressing this in public multiple times, trying to throttle her, yelling out, "I could kill her," all of which, of course, is designed to, later on feed his sense of, I'm my motive is just all over the place. Everyone knows about my motive.
The thing they do really good here, though, is Miriam is just the worst. Like
she is.
The same with Momma when we get to throw Momma from a train, but it's at least a little more subtle in this one. But I don't know. Like just her demeanor and her attitude about stuff, and like she just wants to do what she wants to do, and she doesn't care how it affects anybody else. She's
very loathsome in the sense that we have this investment in Guy, and she's the one who's pushing him, manipulating him. At the same time, though, I mean, I could see how, from Miriam's perspective, she's doing what she needs to do. Although the fact that she then steps out with two men simultaneously, in 1950 America, that's a woman of very low morals. But nonetheless, she has this opportunity. She's going to make the most of it. She's living her best life.
She is, and her character. I always say there needs to be somebody in the movie I can hate. If there's not somebody I want to see lose, then I kind of don't have quite the interest. Oh, I definitely wanted to see her lose.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that somebody was going to kill her, that was quite all right with me. Watching the movie, I didn't have a problem with Marion's demise. But then again, when you have a character that you can hate or love in a movie, you want to be able to say that was a good director. Mm-hmm. They had that actress do what it took to make the audience detest her, and she pulled it off. She really did.
Yeah, I mean, Casey Rogers, she never became a big name Hollywood star, but she does such a good job here. She is definitely a character you love to hate.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get to see Bruno's home life, and we get to see his parents and his mother, who maybe doesn't have her full collection of marbles in place.
Yeah.
Pretty sure about that.
And then we see how his father's kind of hectoring him. Son, I need to talk to you. And of course, Bruno won't have any of it. And that's where he's there's something very Oedipal going on. Mm-hmm. that he has the blind affection of his mother, and his father is the one who's the annoyance, and he wants nothing more than to get his father out of the way so he can, in effect, monopolize his mother. And that's the whole thing. It's not like he's doing this so that he can become president of a company or marry someone. He just wants to basically be the sole object of her attention, and to have and to live this life that he loves without complications.
My brother walked in during the movie, and he's like, "So you're watching Throw Papa from a Train?"
That is a good way of putting it.
That is cute.
And there's a line near the end of that scene where the dad is like, "I'm going to have that boy taken care of if necessary, put under restraint." And I'm like, okay, what else has he done? What is the other crazy stuff that he's done before this point?
Well,
so
you get the intimation in his conversation with Guy. He's been thrown out of 3 colleges, drinking, gambling.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You get the impression that the family is a little, maybe not quite old money, but there definitely is a respectability that he has.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just imagining things like what could I don't know if this is just his newest thing that he's doing of the crisscrossing murders. Like, what other stuff has he done up to this point? But,
you don't start with first degree murder.
Yeah.
You kind of work your way up to it. Maybe he hasn't been pulling wings off flies, but you get the impression he's been.
Well, I'm back to forensics again. He probably abused the family pets one way or another. Mm-hmm. That usually is one of those rolling things that turns into animals first, then humans, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like you. I wondered what he had done prior to what we saw. You know?
Yeah.
But there's this weird point where he kind of is able to beg off his conversation with his father that his father wants, because he has called Guy. Mm-hmm. I had to watch this the second time before I picked up on this. Is that it's not that Guy calls him to vent or anything like that. He calls Guy at the tournament where Guy goes to play after he stops at Metcalf, and it's like, did you get the divorce? And Guy is, he remembers Bruno, but he's kind of like, why are you? I didn't. And then Bruno's going, excellent. Yeah. The murder is on. Yeah.
So. I was sort of hung up on the thing too, like I was talking earlier about the difference that the color made to me, the black and white. I was so expectant because I knew something terrible was going to happen. The whole mood, everything, even some of the background things, like there was a factory in one place or something. It was a rather dark building, and I'm like, I don't know why. Several things just brought, I guess the word would be foreboding, perhaps.
Maybe it's the psycho effect. The psycho effect. The psycho is in black and white.
And I also was fascinated with how my modern mind wanted to say, oh, now I know what I would do in a case like that, and I thought, well, probably not back in 1950-something. I wouldn't have, but I just was kind of amused at the way I was trying to translate that to today, Well, I mean, I'm getting a little bit ahead here, but I mean, where I really felt what you're talking about, I think, for me, was in the scene where Bruno's stalking Miriam.
It's so well, especially the tunnel of love sequence where you have her and the two men going through the tunnel of love again underscoring her
infidelity,
lasciviousness, and that scene where they're going through the tunnel, you hear a scream, and then the way that you have his shadow, the shadow that he's casting from his boat, overshadowing them as they're coming out of the tunnel. It's just it's hard to imagine pulling something that off that effectively with color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think the fact that it's black and white, that was what just made it what it was. What do they call those film noirs? Some of that kind of feeling,
things,
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say this is a film noir, Aaron?
No. Well, it kind of has that visual style at some points, but it's a Hitchcock thriller. Is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that
suspense
kind of
thriller. So.
And of course, that comes at the climax of a whole series of sequences where Bruno takes the train to Metcalf and he stalks Miriam.
Yeah,
he's outside their house, and it's interesting. He's a bit more nondescript. He's a bit more conservatively dressed. You don't see the Bruno tie clip and everything, and so, or do you? But she sees her getting on the bus with her two paramours, and he gets on the bus, and she notices him following her, and it's interesting about how she doesn't really seem scared or intimidated by this. She's just like, oh, I have another man's attention. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I thought like when she was walking away from him and turned, I thought she was flirting with him. I mean, literally,
sure.
A little bit, just like, another one,
But you get a sense of his of the murderous intent in Bruno's mind when the kid comes up to him and bang bang, you're dead, and he pops the kid's balloon.
Yeah.
I thought that was very funny.
It was, but it also kind of underscores how he just is so self-centered. He can't just let a kid being a kid slide. He's got to have his vengeance.
And this is the first suspense sequence of the movie because we know what's going to happen, but she doesn't know.
Yeah.
So it's
and we don't know necessarily when he's going to carry it out because he's never been here before. He's scouting the situation as much as he is the opportunity, waiting for the opportunity, and then he gets it, which is that it's interesting. I was just thinking about something I was listening to recently where they talked about how in so many TV shows they do things at carnivals because that's cheaper. And I had to laugh at that because I read about how Hitchcock basically built a carnival just so he could do this. And because it's such an unusual feature, this idea that you take these boats out to this island, the Magic Isle, to do this. So we get that wonderful sequence where he's chasing her by boat, but it's slow moving. So it's kind of like it's almost like he's drifting towards her as she and the two men are drifting.
He pulls out the popcorn right before that.
Yeah, he's eating it like he's watching a movie himself. Yeah. And then of course he gets to the island and he shows up and it's such a wonderful sequence. Is she fumbling for a cigarette? I'm sure because he produces the lighter and lights it right in front of her face.
She has a cigarette. Yeah.
And he produces that lighter for her, and it's kind of like, hey Miriam, are you Miriam? And yes, and so she says yes. He just strangles her. It's brutal how blunt he is. Once he's confirmed it's her, he has her exactly where he wants. He doesn't waste time.
No.
There's no monologuing. There's no I'm doing this for Guy. He just so she dies, not knowing at all why it is she's being murdered.
This sounds morbid, but I love the shot where she's actually strangled because they show it from her glasses that are on the ground.
Yeah.
So it's like through the glasses, looking up at her, or looking up at him strangling her and then lowering her down.
Yeah. Don't you think that's just one of those scenes that makes us all say, ooh, Hitchcock was really good?
Yeah, and it's simultaneously doing something that's really important is setting up those glasses because those will come in a couple times later on. So,
and because they become proof of death, and because he picks those up, and of course he picks up the lighter. And it's so fascinating to see how, and this is where it's kind of weird to think about how he thought he's going to get away with it. I mean, he's definitely enamored of his own cleverness, but everyone is going one direction. He's going the opposite. He can't help but stand out.
Right.
And he stands up to us in the audience because everyone, as we see him coming back to shore and making his escape, we see how people are, it's like you hear, hey, where's Miriam? Hey, we'll find Miriam. Hey, there she is. She looks like she's passed out. No, she's dead. You hear the screaming and everything. So you hear the discovery, and everyone's curious, trying to figure out what's going on. He's the only one that, he's walking away. So of course he has that. He stands out in particular to the carnival worker who's operating the boats. Mm-hmm. It becomes an important plot point later on.
And I want to just jump back a little bit for the lighter. It's setting up the idea that lighter could be evidence that pins Guy to the murder. But you're like, oh no, it's a little moment of suspense. Don't leave that there. And he grabs it, and it's got that in your mind now that when he actually does do that later, you're set up for that.
Well, Chekhov's gun has been taken out and cleaned.
Yeah, exactly.
We know it's there.
Yeah, setups and payoffs are great. So.
But as he is murdering Miriam, we do see Guy. He is on a train returning to DC after his tennis match, and it's just him and this rather inebriated math professor from Delaware Tech. Which I don't know if that's a place.
Oh, yes, that's a place. I actually taught some classes there.
Oh, okay.
It's a place.
So the way that they have that later scene where it's like, he's a professor, Harvard? No, Delaware Tech.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. I really lost it right there, and that was too funny for me. I'm sorry.
And he's singing a song about a goat. He's like, there was a man who had a goat. It's like, it doesn't make very good evidence for his alibi later. It's like, he's singing about a goat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good if the guy singing remembers who was singing it.
Yeah.
But he comes, Guy comes to his home, and as he's unlocking his door, he hears, his name being called out from the shadows, and it's Bruno.
And I was like, don't go. Don't go. That's suspense right there, too, because we know what's happened, and Guy doesn't know yet. And it's like, that's what you want the audience to do, to be like, don't go there. Because then immediately, that's him stepping into Act 2. He's now stuck in this trap.
Yeah.
Yes. Bruno produces the glasses. Here's proof that I killed Miriam. And, of course, because now, Guy is now basically in his debt.
Yeah.
And Guy has to now fulfill his end of the agreement. And there's that. I love the threat. First, it's the ringing phone, which you don't know why it's ringing, but you assume that it can't be good. And then the police pull up to provide the notification. He's not there. Guy's not there, so they go away. But there's the sense that already this is a weight hanging on him. So, but the call is from Anne. So he goes to her father's house, and this is when we see Anne for the first time, and we also see Anne's sister Barbara, played by
Pat Hitchcock.
Yeah. And this is when he is, formally notified about Miriam's murder, and they start talking about how Guy might be accused. And it's interesting because you're starting to get they underscore the point that Bruno is making. He has motive to spare. Right. Everyone's going to assume that if Miriam is murdered, that he's the one who did it. But he did meet this guy on the train, and there's his alibi. So the next morning, Guy goes to Metcalf to be interviewed by the police, and they also have the man with whom he was sitting in the observation car, and this man is like, I can't remember a thing about that.
I just want to jump back to the Pat Hitchcock scene real quick because she's great. Like,
she is.
It's a lot of it's the lines that they gave her, but like she delivers them amazingly. But my favorite one that she did was her dad's like talking about Miriam. She's free to pursue her happiness, and she's like, I think she pursued it in all directions.
Actually, that's not my favorite line of hers. And that's my favorite line of hers is when they're talking about how Guy should hang out with them for a few days, or maybe this might be a little bit of a later scene. But she goes, "No, Dad's not afraid of a little scandal. He is a United States senator."
Yeah, that wasn't that scene.
She does have some of the best lines in it, and I can't help but wonder if maybe she had a few extra good lines because she's the director's daughter.
Wouldn't be
Undoubtedly.
surprised.
I mean, I was pretty sure about that one. But it was good. Like you say, it came out very well.
So It's interesting. The scene where Guy is with Metcalf police and they're talking with the professor about the alibi. Apparently Hitchcock worked to get Farley Granger to do this. This is back when studios basically controlled actors, and Granger was with a different studio. And this is where I can see why Hitchcock wanted him. And I'm glad it was Granger and not his first choice, because I mean, William Holden, I don't know if he could have pulled off the character that Granger does quite as well, the trap character.
I don't think so.
The closest I can think of Holden doing something like that in a movie was like Bridge over the River Kwai.
Yeah.
Later, when he's kind of
Are we talking about the senator?
No. The guy, the tennis player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That Hitchcock originally wanted William Holden to play the character.
Okay.
And Holden was just beginning to take off. This was he would have done this after Sunset Boulevard, but before he gets his Oscar for Stalag 17. And Holden, I think he's a good actor, but I can't see him quite, succeeding quite as well with that nervous, trapped character. It's not who Holden was. I think he could be that, and he was that maybe a little bit later on, but I don't think he could quite pull it off. It's like you think about Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
Or even, say, Bridges at Toko Ri, which is around this time, and he can't see him being kind of, feeling helpless, cornered, like he's being, in that sense of helplessness.
No, to me, he always was more of a commanding person. The presence, it's like, I said this, so you will do that, kind of thing. Yeah. And it would be hard, I think, for his persona to cave like that, I mean.
Farley Granger, by contrast, I think he pulls that off very well. Yeah. And you start to see that where, I think in that, you start to see it when he's having the conversation with Senator Morton, Leo G. Carroll, and Anne and Barbara, where he's having the conversation. But you really see it when the alibi proves to not be a successful alibi, and you see Granger almost desperately trying to sell that the alibi still works. Right. Does it really matter that he can't remember? The fact that I remember him, shouldn't that be enough? And the police were like...
That's exactly what he said, I think, almost.
Yeah. And there's no answer, it just cuts away.
Well, there's a sense of no. Yeah. it's that's not how it works. Yeah. So now the police decide that they're going to follow Guy 24 hours a day. But it's not the only person. The police aren't the only ones tailing Guy, because Bruno starts to shadow him. And it's fascinating how we think of so many movies, the police tailing, or they're like under a street lamp across the street. Or I mean, the officer tailing him practically becomes a member of the family.
Yeah.
And it's Bruno that you see off in the distance under a lamppost.
There's that great scene where they're driving through the monuments in D.C. And is it the Washington Monument or Jefferson?
I think it's the Jefferson Monument.
Yeah, Jefferson Monument. He's standing on the corner of the steps, and we just see this dark figure on these white steps.
You can't quite pick my detail, but you know it's him.
Yeah.
So, and this is when you start to see Bruno upping the pressure by ingratiating himself into Guy's life. And it starts with that tennis match, and it's almost a little too fakey for me, but I still like it. Where you see the tennis match, and everyone's watching the match back and forth. You see the heads pivoting,
and
the one head's not moving. Yeah, I love that shot.
I did too.
Yeah, he's staring right at Guy there. So
it's similar to what you were talking about when he was coming back from the island, having killed Marion. Like, he's the one in the crowd that's moving that way.
Yeah. So he stands out a lot more. But he introduces himself to Anne. He ingratiates himself with this French couple because he knows French. And so you're seeing how Bruno's going to make sure that he's putting pressure on Guy to follow on his end of it. But he is also introduced to Barbara at the tennis match, and that's when we see that we start to see him beginning to crumble. Because go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with you. I found it interesting when you could actually start to see him breaking down. Realizing maybe it's not going to be what I thought that was very
he's not quite the cool customer we thought he was, because he looks at Barbara, who looks an awful lot like Miriam, and you start to see him, tensing up.
Yeah.
And this gets played out that evening at a dinner party at the Senators, where because he's been able to win over this French couple, they invite him as their guest. And this is where you start to see him being weird when he has this conversation with the senator. And he talks about how he has this form of power that's going to make atomic power look like the horse and buggy. And he's talking about, do you want to smell things on Mars? And, the senator, who this is probably not the first one weird, person he's been dealing with. He's like, okay, whatever. So.
And then he starts this conversation with these old ladies that I love that in Hitchcock movies where there's these older ladies that are fascinated with murder. And it's like as soon as he starts talking about murder to them, he's like, oh, or they're all like, oh, and then I can't remember any of the dialogue, but
it was initially they're talking about how to commit the murder, and they're talking about using a weapon, then they're talking about using poison, and then they talk about strangulation. And Bruno is going to playfully show off how you do it. Now, apparently, this is something Hitchcock liked to do at parties. He liked to mock demonstrate what it's like to strangle somebody. And initially, it is just that. It's a mock demonstration. But then he sees Barbara, and it triggers him. And pretty soon, he is actively throttling this woman.
And before this, they set up the glasses thing with having the flashback play in the glasses of the reflection of the lighter.
I thought that was very clever, where the sister's glasses, were the thing that he was focused on. When he was like looking over that lady's head.
It's one of the things I think is one of the best parts of it is the way they do the sisterly bond between Anne and Barbara. How ultimately it is the two of them who together piece it together. Anne picks up on Bruno fairly quickly. When she sees when at the tennis match, she sees the tie clip that Bruno has. She recognizes that he was stalking them earlier, and so she's uneasy about it. And then Barbara realizes that he wasn't throttling the old lady just because he was throttling the old lady. He was doing it because he was responding to her. He was looking at me while she was throttling her, is what she says later. So the two of them together realize that something is very, very wrong with Bruno. And how after Bruno is torn away from the woman so he doesn't kill her, Guy escorts Bruno from the party and then confronts him. And Guy confesses to her everything. I mean, this is love.
And there's a line where the pressure is at its highest right before the dam breaks, where she's like, how did you get him to do it? And then it very quickly becomes she believes him.
Yes.
But like the police are going to say the exact same thing. How did you get him to do it?
How did you get him?
The difference being that because she loves Guy and she knows Guy, she knows he didn't agree to this, and that so she believes immediately that he's kind of in this corner. So they come up with this plot where Guy calls Bruno, says, "I'm going to go through with it. I'm going to do it tonight.
I'm going to throw Papa from a train."
Throw Papa from a train. Bruno's already mailed him all the things he needs: a key to the house, a map to the house, a gun he bought from a pawn shop. So he follows Bruno's instructions. He goes up to Mr. Antony's room, but he gets there. He puts away the gun. And he starts to warn him about his son. And then the light comes on, and it turns out it's not Mr. Antony. It's Bruno.
I know. I was surprised at that little move. That got me at first.
Interestingly enough, the movie is based upon a novel by Patricia Highsmith. It was her first novel. And in the novel, Guy does kill Mr. Antony.
Oh, wow. That's a twist.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know if this was something that Hitchcock wanted in the script, or if it was, production code. We can't, keep him as a sympathetic protagonist if he kills someone. regardless of the decision, I mean, I think it's very nicely done.
Yeah.
That he goes through it, but instead of killing Mr. Anthony, he's hoping that he can somehow use get Mr. Anthony to do something about his son. But it turns out, he's out of town. Bruno knew that. He was going to say that, but then he realized that Guy was a little too insistent about getting in there.
Yeah.
So he's got to, he's got to, he figures he's going to catch Guy at this, and Guy tries to reason with Bruno, and this is when you see Bruno recognizing that Guy's not going to come through on his end. Bruno says, "I'm not going to do this." So now Guy is, or no, Guy says, "I'm not going to do this." So Bruno is beginning to plot his revenge. And so the next morning,
And he's got a gun as he's walking out. So we've got suspense coming in of no, don't kill him, and suspense going out of no, don't get shot as you're going out.
and it's so nicely done because it's Guy walking down the steps as coolly as possible, and Bruno is like 2 steps behind him, and he's got the gun, and he's pointing it at him.
Yeah.
And then you get to the steps, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to shoot you now, Guy. I'm going to come up with something better.
Yeah, this is something that modern filmmakers I don't think could do very well. I guess I'm kind of in that basket, but but Hitchcock is great at this. Like, it's not you don't turn it into an action scene. You just play out the suspense.
I'm sure once you get about 30 films under your belt, you'll add this down.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty far into Hitchcock's
That's true.
career. So,
Yeah.
I mean, by that point, he had mastered all the techniques. That's the thing I love about this is that it's just so it's not showy. It's not overdone. He's just he's just doing his thing and doing it so smoothly.
Well, he makes the audience do some of the work. Like at the party, he shows some of Bruno's falling apart, losing touch with reality or whatever term you want to use. And then yet, in a few more scenes, he's doing the switch with the dad thing, which shows some thought and process. And I mean, I don't know, Hitchcock just kind of draws you in and he makes you work a little bit and think about what you're actually seeing,
And that's one of my favorite things about a filmmaker is when a filmmaker trusts you as an audience member to be able to do that, and that they don't have to sit there and spell it out for you in crayon.
Yeah, it's that suspense. It's like that. Well, it'll come up with the lighter later. The reason why the lighter works so well is because they've set it up several times, and they're like, this thing is a possibility that it's gonna come up, and
that gets realized in the next scene.
Yeah,
yeah. And I like how it's not Guy who then goes to Bruno's mother. It's Anne, and it's nice in the sense of how you're hoping that maybe the feminine connection works, and this is when we realize that again Bruno's mother
she's not all there.
Exactly. But of course and there's also the fact that most parents probably have a difficult time accepting that their child's a murderer, but she's kind of lost it. But of course this tipped Bruno off, and this is when he has the inspiration that he's going to plant the lighter on the island and then direct the police to it. And I like how it's not implied necessarily that this is guaranteed to work, but it says something about Bruno's. I mean, he is clever, like he says, but he is not as clever as he thinks. Nor, and this is I think the fatal mistake he makes. He assumes that other people simply are not as clever as he is, and so therefore it's just he's kind of a giant among pygmies type of thing, and that this was going to this was bound to work out. So and this is where I think the writing is well done, the directing is well done. He gives enough clues to his thinking to where then Anne goes to talk to Guy, and Guy and Anne piece together what Bruno's going to do. They figure out that he can't plant the lighter on the island until nightfall, so they actually have time. Guy's in the middle of it, is stuck doing this tennis match, and the tennis match is another great example of suspense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just cancel
I was
it.
just thinking
Yeah, there's all these limitations where he has to be at the match, and they set a specific time, which this is another thing that is great for suspense and any kind of well, when you're doing this, it's a suspense thing in the third act. Most movies do this. Of they have a ticking time clock of the match is gonna go really long, and night is falling, and we got to get to the island.
And it's nice to know because as he's playing the match, you see Bruno leisurely taking the train to the island.
Yeah.
To Metcalf. He goes to the amusement park. He's practically, having to cool his heels. He's patiently waiting, or maybe not so patiently, because he's getting a little impatient as time goes along. But he's waiting for night to fall so he can plan it. And so you have a guy rushing through the tennis match, and the commentating is really neat because it demonstrates how Guy is really being pushed out of his comfort zone. He's described as a methodical player. He does things slowly, and instead it's bam, bam, bam. He's winning set after set because he has to get out of there as quickly as possible. And of course, I almost forgot the other neat part of tension is where Bruno's playing with the lighter and he loses it in the grate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This scene, this is where I was introduced to suspense.
Yes.
I watched this movie in Intro to Cinematography before I even went to SEC to do the whole film program. And this is where I was introduced to this scene where he's reaching down to, so he stops on the curb. He goes to light his cigarette and he drops the lighter down a storm drain, and he's got to have that lighter because he's got to pin it on the person, and suddenly you feel on his side. Actually, the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I was the exact opposite. I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to just keep it out of reach, because then and see how he does with that.
And I love this. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say I love the part where you could see his fingers coming so close to it,
reaching.
and I found myself just leaning more forward and forward, like, don't let him reach it, don't let him reach it. I'm like you. I didn't want him to get it.
Yeah, well, I think the point where it took me over to his side was where it falls off the first ledge and goes down. And it's like, oh no. And it's like, what? Oh no. Why am I thinking, oh no?
There's another neat thing they do with the lighter, a couple scenes before, and I just really marveled at it because it's such a throwaway scene, and yet it's so well done, which is when Bruno's on the train. And he has just lit a cigarette using the lighter. And the guy next to him asks for a light. But instead of using the lighter, Bruno makes a point.
Oh, yeah, he takes out a match.
He doesn't just take it. It takes him like 10 seconds to find a match.
Oh, yeah.
So and the thing is, the guy has just seen him use a lighter.
It's a great character beat.
It is. Yeah. But it's like he has the self-awareness. He doesn't want to show off the lighter.
Right.
But at the same time, he's playing with it. He loses it. It's this arrogance which is going to be his downfall. This assumption that he is going to make this work. But a guy, wins the match with Ann and Barbara's help. He's able to throw off the police who were actually preparing to take him in for more questioning, and he rushes to Union Station and gets on train to Metcalf. So he's trying to get through. There's a bit of a delay, so now it's a race against time, and it is nicely done. It's not overdone. It's not like the suspenseful music, pounding and everything like that. It's
you don't need music or anything once you've got the way that it works best is the good guy's going slow, the bad guy's going fast, which is ironic because the bad guy's actually going slow, but he doesn't have to go fast. He's already there. He's already ahead of him.
Yeah, he's impatiently waiting in a sense for everything to catch up to him.
Yeah.
And of course, the way they measure is and it was fascinating when I didn't pick up this the first time, but you see in the very scenes the sun is just lower and lower.
Yeah. When they cut from at the amusement park where Bruno's looking at the sunset, and then they cut to him on the train, and the sun is dipping under the horizon. It's like, oh no. Anyway, it's great.
But Guy gets to Metcalf. He gets a taxi. He's being followed by the Metcalf police. He gets to the amusement park, and by this point, it's nightfall. Guy is in line, but the problem is that because the island has become such an attraction because of murder there, that there aren't any available boats. So he's rather impatiently waiting in line, and the boat operator is the same guy who was there, and he recognized this guy. And the police have told him, we think that the murder's coming. They don't bother naming the murderer, so they're saying the murderer. And he sees the murderer, and he goes and tells the police, and Bruno knows that he has to at least pull back temporarily. And he turns around and he sees Guy, and Guy chases him onto a merry-go-round. And as they're climbing on, the Metcalf police, showing that they are indeed the finest, one of them fires off a shot that kills the carousel operator.
Yeah.
I just love it. It's kind of like the Wild West thing. You're just going to start firing shots at a carousel where there are children on the horses.
That bullet went past all those children and killed that operator.
And of course, because he dies in a very movie fashion, which is he slumps forward, which means the carousel now goes faster and faster and faster. And the kids are loving it. Like the parents are like, oh, no, Timmy.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's like, kids like, yeah, this one's finally getting good. Meanwhile, Guy and Bruno are fighting. And of course, the police, now that they're basically... not only demonstrated their uselessness, but also how they're making things worse. One of the carnival operators goes underneath the carousel. Hitchcock said this was the most dangerous stunt he ever did in any of his movies. That they had a guy going under there to pull plugs and whatnot to get this thing to stop. But a whole carousel collapses, and it traps Bruno fatally. And it's only now that the police are told by the guy, no, not that guy. Yeah. That guy. It's not the guy, it's Bruno.
And they play it really well of when he's on the train, he's like, it's that guy. And they're like, yeah, we know. And it's like, no. So and then it's not till the end that they have him actually be like, no, it wasn't that guy at all. It was this other guy.
And you get that great final conversation between Guy and Bruno where Guy's like, be decent. Tell you're dying. Just tell the cops I didn't do it. And Bruno just being a petty little jerk to last, like, no, it's on the island. Why are you making me say this? But it's not on the island. It's in his hand. Yeah. So when they see it in the hand, they'll know that that Guy's innocent. You get that final scene where Guy and Ann can finally be together. They're on the train. Somebody tries to strike up a polite conversation. They walk right up to the observation.
That was good.
That was
good.
So this is actually called Living in the Benefit. Yeah. It's the last little lesson that they learn. It's like, don't talk to strangers on trains.
That's good.
But
yes. But let's not be social, people. So, and that's the movie.
I thought it was excellent. I really did. I was very taken with it.
It's one of those ones. I haven't seen, all the Hitchcock movies, and there's still a couple of biggies that I haven't even got to yet. But it surprised me that this is not quite top tier. I mean, when you hear Hitchcock, you hear a lot of the same names rattled off: Psycho, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Rebecca,
The Bird.
I'm sorry,
Birds.
The
Birds, 39 Steps. It's funny how this is in some ways a more famous movie. And yet, it's not one that people, they'll talk more about Rear Window before they'll talk about.
This is actually my favorite Hitchcock movie, by the way.
I can see why, too.
Yeah,
it's so simple.
Yeah, the functions of the plot are just, it's great. Like we'll get into that when we get into it, but I'll talk about the act structure later. But it's fantastic
my favorite
structure.
Might be 39 Steps.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
So 39 Steps is actually a pre-make of North by Northwest, and so there's another one too. Saboteur, the one where it ends on the Statue of Liberty. Those three movies are the same idea, tried 3 different times.
And concept great enough to where it works, very well in all 3 movies.
Yeah.
But of course, this is a pretty good concept too, because it ends up being adapted into Throw Momma from the Train.
Yep. And so here's our review of Throw Momma from a Train.
We open on Larry Donner, played by Billy Crystal, who is a writer struggling with writer's block. And I know you've never had that, Aaron.
Oh no,
So,
no, never.
so
This is my biggest beef with this movie. This is not at all how writer's block works.
I know.
Like you don't just get stuck on one word and be like, "What is the word?" But
which kinda
they've
makes
got to
me wonder-
dramatize it somehow.
Which kind of makes me wonder about the writer who wrote this script. Why would they not be able? You think the one thing a writer could do, represent well?
Yeah, it's
maybe
right
you had
about
writer's
writing.
block about writing.
It's kind of
Maybe.
like how filmmaking in movies, they always show a bustling studio where they've got all these million different sets or different costumed people like clowns and different things going in between things. It's like that's not at all what a movie set is like. But
The sound man would be going berserk.
yeah. But anyway, they've got I admit it's they've got to dramatize it. They've got to play it out in a way that is a way that we can keep track of it as an audience. And
It also seems like in a way they're playing it out in a way that plays to Billy Crystal's strengths as a performer. Mm-hmm. And this gets to something that and we talked about this before we started recording about Billy Crystal just does not wear well with me in this movie, and he's the straight man, but he's not really. He didn't get that memo. He thinks he has to kind of play it up for yucks.
yeah,
So you get the monologuing, and you get that early on when he because of his writer's block, he decides to turn on the TV, and there he sees his ex-wife Margaret, played by the radiant Kate Mulgrew.
yeah. This is where I had my sister come in because she used to love Kate Mulgrew, and apparently she does not anymore. Because I had her watch that one scene and she left before the scene was done, and it's like, okay, well, that's how that is.
Yeah.
It's basically her ex too. She's got a new favorite actress, Maya Rudolph. But, yeah.
So we have we have Margaret on the Oprah Winfrey Show with Oprah Winfrey. This is back before Oprah Winfrey became too big to do this.
Yeah.
And she's plugging this new novel. I think it was called Hot Fire, something like that, which Larry claims she stole from him. Now, that becomes Larry's running refrain throughout the movie. But do we know for certain that she stole it from him? Apart from the fact that he makes that claim to his agent, and his agent doesn't contradict him. I mean, what evidence do we have that she actually stole it versus to say that that's just his way of of kind of venting this outrage at the fact that she has the hit novel while he can't figure out what the night is, and so he's but it's the kind of thing that maybe when I had that realization as I'm watching the scene, it's like. It made me not like his character a lot less.
Well, I know you don't have warm fuzzies for him in this movie, but I think you might be right. I felt the same way. I was like, how much did she steal?
Yes.
Did you just say to her one day, oh, so-and-so might make a good plot, and you left it, and then she went ahead and did
Or did he have like this box of this typed manuscript, and it was Hot Fire by, and the last thing he was going to do was put in his name, and then she typed in her name and took off for the agent.
There's a difference.
That's the impression you get from him.
Yeah, he's implying that he wrote this thing out, and she just basically took some white out and took out his name, put in her name, and now she's this incredibly successful author. But she wears it so well.
She did.
But also watching this show is Momma Lift, played by Anne Ramsey. And she to me, I just get so fascinated by it. I love how you have these actors who spend their entire lives in Hollywood doing their thing, and how they do have that big break later. I think Martindale's another example of this, where it's like later in their career, they just had boom, it just comes together for them. And all of a sudden they have this. And it's just so sad to me, the fact that Anne Ramsey hit it big right before she dies.
I know, just literally right before.
And you actually see it in her character, because she has that wonderfully effective rasp and that inability to articulate. That was a byproduct of her throat cancer treatments.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That she could not articulate the way she could during even as recently as the Goonies. But it works for her character.
Yeah, it does.
It's so well done, because it adds to her irritatingness, her acerbiqueness. It's just so brilliantly done, and you see it directed like a laser on her son Owen, played by Danny DeVito, who fantasizes about killing her in these. I'd say there have been scenes that do violence comedically better, but these are pretty darn good.
Oh, yes.
And in parts because the way that they do the Anne Ramsey reactions, like he puts the lie in the Pepsi, and Pepsi definitely paid sponsorship because you see him quite a bit in this movie, and she goes ah,
Yeah.
and later when he's helping her clean out her ear, and he stabs her, and she stands up, he's got the scissors between her ears,
Yeah, all the way through her. Yeah.
and that you're really getting a sense as to how so much of his emotional life is focused upon getting rid of his mother. So, but Owen's also an aspiring writer. That's where he channels his energy, and he's taking this creative writing class at a community college taught by Larry, who and very quickly I love the class because they're all it's not for writing about them so much as it is about them getting out their personal fantasies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one guy whose writing assignment was just a list of 100 women he wanted to sleep with.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard at that. I thought that was hysterical.
They actually do a callback to the thing of the movie. But Owen, you get the impression he does want to be aspiring. He just has no idea how to do it. You also see though Larry he has this girlfriend now, Beth, played by Kim Greist, and I feel like she's the most underserved character in the movie because she apparently is this very nice woman, very accomplished. She's an anthropology professor. We can't understand why, for the life of her, she is with him. It's like he can't get over what Margaret did to him. He talks about it constantly. It is a wet blanket on the relationship, and it's not just that it's a wet blanket on the relationship. He's so public about it. He's embarrassing her in public. It's again, why?
Yeah, Billy Crystal's character was not very likable.
No.
I mean, if he had a bit of the charm that you see in, say, When Harry Met Sally. Mm-hmm. Which, admittedly, very different movie and all that. But nonetheless, it's like he basically has three beats. He is he's the blocked writer, he is the frustrated spouse, and he is the annoyed teacher. That's basically all he plays in this movie. It's like, why does he?
None of them are very relatable.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
But you do see I like how when Owen, who is very much he's the Bruno substitute, and he takes the ingratiatingness to a whole new level, where he's got stalking down to the point where it's like he's got CIA levels of just appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I love that scene where he corners Larry in the laundromat. Like, why didn't you read my story?
Yeah.
And you get what is the dialogue that is, I won't say it's the best dialogue in the movie, but it's always stuck with me, is when Larry is deconstructing Owen's story. Mm-hmm. You have a 3-page story where the murder takes place on page 2, and and Owen's like, why is it not good? And my line is, you only had 2 characters, one of whom was dead by page 2.
Yeah.
It's like the exact opposite of suspense.
Yeah.
So but then they sit down, and Larry is giving him story advice, and this is, I think, this to me is one of the more subtle and thus better done callbacks to the original movie, because this is akin to when Bruno's describing the crisscross to a guy, which is where Larry is having this socially oriented conversation. He's speaking in terms of story and everything. And Owen is processing it as, you are giving me advice as to how to deal with this puzzle that we have in their respective situations. Because, the 2 things that Owen knows about Larry is that, 1, he's a writing teacher, 2, he hates his wife. And Owen is, one, an aspiring writer, two, he hates his mother. And so, whereas, Larry's speaking as a writer, Owen's thinking, you're helping me deal with our mutual problem. We've got this problem with motive. And really bringing that up. And then he directs, and Larry just has this casual, go see a Hitchcock movie. And of course, what Hitchcock movie does he see?
Strangers on a Train.
Strangers on a Train. And you get, and I wonder just how closely DeVito was mimicking Robert Walker's performance there, where he's eating the popcorn. As he's watching the movie, just like he was eating Bruno's eating the popcorn in the boat.
Yeah.
And he thinks, I've been directed to this to get the message. This is, so he's like, I get it. He speaks a little too cryptically for Larry. And then he flies to Hawaii. So Larry's continuing this spiral, this very unappealing spiral he's doing. Owen flies to Hawaii. And again, he's like this genius stalker. He breaks into her house.
Yeah.
He's shadowing her as she's making love to her gardener. I love how he has made a sandwich. Initially, I was kind of thinking, he has the house nearby somehow, and he's watching it from there. He's making the sandwich. He sees Margaret Taylor. He's still in her house. And he follows her onto a ferry because Margaret is going to a book signing in Maui from Oahu, and she's on the ferry, and he's like right next to her. And it's such a nice. I like how they're not trying to do a scene for scene, frame for frame reproduction of it, but it's the same basic thing, but it's updated. It's also the fact that whereas Robert Walker is a relatively handsome gentleman, Danny DeVito is, and I think he's one of America's great acting treasures. He, nonetheless, is Danny DeVito. And so you have Margaret going, this little weirdos right next to her. So she steps out onto deck, and she loses one of her valuable earrings. And I think this is my favorite bit of acting from Danny DeVito, is when he's advancing on her with his gloves on, getting ready to strangle her, and then she's leaning over the railing trying to get to her, and DeVito suddenly repurposes his hands. They go from strangle mode to shove mode.
Fabulous.
I love, comedically wise, it works that he's the most incompetent killer there is.
Yeah.
Like, it just so happens to be that she leans over the edge right when he's right there. And so all he has to do is push her.
And he advances.
Well, before that happened, I was wondering, I was thinking, is he going to be able to reach her neck? Is that going to be part of the comedy? He can't quite get there, And
That's
then,
funny.
like you say, when she leans and he turns his hand, then you're like, it's going to work.
And they do that nice shot. And I think this DeVito is, this was his first film as a director, but he really had a lot of the steps down. He walks up and fills the frame, and then we're left with the assumption that he has pushed her into the sea because Larry, who has spent the night, passed out on the beach, he crawls home, passes out, and then he starts getting these multiple calls from Owen, from Hawaii, which you can, 1987. I don't know how expensive that was. But I love how he keeps calling him from different payphones that he somehow gets to in the blink of an eye.
Within seconds, you see this completely different backdrop with a payphone there.
And I love it because it's like Owen, it's like he has ideas for how these things work, but they're not right. So it's like, okay, he doesn't want to be traced, so he figures if he calls from multiple payphones in Hawaii, they'll never figure it out. And then he goes, it's like, what did you do? He says, I can't say it on the phone. All I can tell you is that I killed Margaret.
Yeah. That was good.
And it's just, and I had to say, I had never seen it all the way through. I'd only seen parts of it. But this, I just really came to appreciate how genius this performance is, because the way he just does that.
I agree with you. I think DeVito is absolutely something special. He has taken what might be detriments to some people and made them the absolute highlights of his performances. He plays on that, and he does it the right way and well.
He pitches it so perfectly. He I mean, unlike Billy Crystal, who I kind of feel is overselling the character to the point where he's annoying. It is Owen is pitch perfect. And the funny thing is, I was reading up on the notes for this. Apparently, at one point, DeVito was supposed to play Larry. And they were going to get.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I am too. That's just what I was thinking.
But they're kind of shy for other actors. But I mean, but he just does Owen so perfectly, and because it's like it's this combination of sincerity, innocence, desperation.
Well, not only that, we could talk genetics for a moment here. I mean, I can't see Billy Crystal as that mama's child. He just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
DeVito's perfect as Anne Ramsey's child.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that Crystal was supposed to play Owen. It was that they were going to have some other actor.
Oh, I thought you were...
But then apparently DeVito slotted himself into Owen, and then that's when they brought in Billy Crystal to play a role in the role of Larry. So
my bad.
Yeah. Well, I didn't explain very well. So. But of course, Larry has... The problem is that because he didn't know Owen was doing this, he doesn't have a great alibi. Right. So then Billy Crystal then basically runs around town in a panic, scattering clues to the four winds. He goes and talks to his friend and kind of sets up the premise to him and the girl he's with. So now they both know that he's talking about flying to Hawaii and his ex-wife's death. And then he goes to Beth and he then, confesses it all to her. And again, this is where, it's a difference that I find. I know this is probably better safe for Criss, but whereas with Anne, it's kind of, you can understand why she's sympathetic. You've said the fact that she believes him to be innocent. There's nothing that Larry that Larry has shown us as a character, which is why Beth would be sympathetic and trying to help him out here. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm thinking if I'm in her situation, I'm like, you know what? This is where I'm going to go back into the dating pool. I know it's a little scary, but I think I could definitely do better than this crazy man who, now is obsessing over the fact he didn't kill the wife. He has spent, his entire time telling me he wants to kill. So, and then of course she then calls and relates some of these details on an answering machine that just happens to be playing while Detective De Benedetto is there. So now, all these arrows are pointing towards Larry. Owen comes back. Larry picks him up. He tries to convince Owen to turn himself in. Owen won't do it. So instead, Larry now finds himself hiding from the police at Owen's house. And this is when he gets to meet Mama Lift for the first time. And I have to say, this was beautiful slapstick. The opening scene where they meet Owen and Larry's at the table. They're eating breakfast, and Mama Lift shows up, and hey, this is Larry. He's our cousin, and Mama goes, "You don't have a cousin. You lied to me." Whack with the frying pan. It's so well done. Now this is where I could see having a comedic performer of Billy Crystal's caliber really plays, because he does sell this so well. Mm-hmm. But it is it's just so well done. And the physical comedy is pretty well done in this movie. But you have Owen now trying to pressure Larry into killing Mama Lift. And Larry's really feeling he won't do it, but he Owen's kind of trying to put him in these situations to do it. There's actually this great scene where he wants him to kill Mama Lift by smothering, and Larry instead goes and confesses to her. And it's a great callback to
same as Strangers on a Train.
Yeah, the only difference being that it is Mama Lift that he's confessing all this to, but we learned that one of Mama Lift's gifts is that she can sleep with her eyes open.
Yeah.
I just love he does this whole confession, and then we hear the snoring.
Yeah.
Again, beautiful performance by Anne Ramsey. Like, she doesn't oversell the snoring and all that. So now he's searching around for evidence that incriminates Owen, and then Detective De Benedetto arrives with the police officer because they're interviewing everyone in Larry's class, and Owen is one of the students makes him an actual suspect or subject to interview, and then you have that Owen initially doesn't want to let the police in, and then he sees that this thread's missing, so he assumes that Larry has successfully carried out his end of the deal. So he goes in the house, And then he sees that Larry has not, his mother's still alive. And so I love how he tortures Larry. Yeah. Oh, I'll go get the tea because he knows Larry's hiding in the pantry. And could you get this for me? Or maybe here it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
the sugar.
This is suspense played for comedy,
Yeah.
which is something you can do very easily. Like the tension can be either aimed towards fear or comedy. So
And DeVito just does it so well, and not just as an actor, but also as a director. It's nicely structured. But we do get these failed attempts to kill Momma that are almost more by Owen than they are by Larry. Owen, there's the scene with the door. There's another attempt, but they're all failing for various comedic reasons. But then Mama Lift sees a report on the television about the manhunt for Larry.
Oh, that's right.
And then she flips out. And it again, Anne Ramsey's so good in this. Hey, he's the murderer! Call 911! And she answers the phone. And, you get what we call those shots they were doing. It was kind of like the frenetic shots going back, sudden pans back, sudden pans forward.
You talking about a trombone shot where it's zooming in and
you get the
moving
trombone
out
shot
at the
zooming
same
in.
time?
He's a murderer.
Yeah.
And then you get around the phone, it zooms back as the cord's being cut. It's very hectic, and this prompts Larry to flee. And they end up on a train together, and they don't quite explain how that is.
Yeah. I was wondering about that, too.
I guess it's because Owen still wants... he can't trust his mother to be alone because she'll call the police, so he's got to bring her. They don't really explain it. I guess they don't need to. But Larry's kind of again dwelling on his miserable writer's block, and Mama Lift fixes it for him.
Yeah,
I was sultry.
She just casually comes up with a better word than he did, and it's like
I found that very funny too.
And that finally is what activates his murder impulse.
Yeah.
So he's but he gets over it pretty quickly. And again, Billy Crystal doesn't sell that transition. He sells the transition. I want to kill her, but then we don't see what it is that all of a sudden changes his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we do see the transition in Owen of he goes from wanting his mama dead to you're actually going to kill mama? Like, no. He's chasing after him in the train. And this is where we get to the title mislead of it's not throw mama from a train. It's save mama on a train.
Right.
And we get some more of that slapstick where, they're hanging, mama's basically, she's on the verge of falling off and Larry's got her by her legs that are wrapped around his neck, and she's screaming, ah! But Larry and Owen finally rescue her, and then she gives Larry a swift kick, so he falls off the train, and he ends up in the hospital. And this is when he discovers that Owen hasn't killed Margaret.
Yeah.
That she had slipped and fallen off the boat accidentally. And she was rescued by a fisherman whom she's now going to marry, and she's received a $1.5 million deal for the rights to her story. And it just it's salt on the wound, but it does something for Larry, because that night he has a nightmare, and he wakes up and he breaks his writer's block is broken. Mm-hmm. He now is going to write. He has the ability to write, and it's to write about his adventures with Owen. And then we flash forward to 1 year later. He's on the verge of finishing his novel when he receives a telephone call from Owen, who's outside. He invites Owen in. At the end, there's no crime. So it's all's well. Finds out that Mama's passed away, natural causes. He swears, and that Owen has also written a book that has been published. And Larry is so happy for him. What's it about? Well, it's about our adventures together with my mama. And Larry flips. And this is actually where it's perfectly understandable. But Larry then Owen, is like, it's a pop-up book, and it's this cheerful reinterpretation. It is really sweet. It kind of gets to, you can see, if you can write it, if the best you could do is a 3-page murder mystery where, two characters, one of whom dies in the middle of it. Pop-up books probably are really what you're going to do.
I just found that so amusing.
Oh, it is. It is. It's trying, because it gets to how you really can't hate the Owen character the way you can hate the Bruno character in the other movie. He's just even though he is trying to murder someone, he's just so darn sweet.
Yeah.
So, and then we get the final scene where they're on the beach, and we find out that Larry's book's a bestseller, Owen's book's a bestseller. They're now living their best lives, and Beth is somehow with Larry. I guess being the girlfriend of a successful author is better than being the girlfriend of a struggling author. So, and that's the movie.
So that's our review of Throw Momma from a Train.
Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA. So let's dissect and deconstruct, compare and contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
Crisscross.
Thanks for doing that. Okay, so crisscross for today. I'll have to be honest, I don't have a ton, but I think there's enough that we can get some meat on the bones. So most obviously similarities is the premise. Two people that want somebody out of their lives that they one of them ends up tricking the other one into, well, they go crisscross. One kills the other one's person they want out of their lives, and then the other one is forced to have to do it for the first person. Yeah.
I mean, I was really struck when I was thinking about the comparisons, is the contrast that stand out. Because I think part of that's because Throw Momma from the Train is so obviously an homage to Strangers on a Train. And yet it's fascinating how they can take so much of it, not just the premise, but so many of the beats, the elements, and then repurpose it in a very different way.
Yep.
I mean, you don't have any of the. I mean, Owen is has his own deficiencies as a person, but they're very different from Bruno's.
Right.
And whereas Bruno can be menacing and evil, and you want to see him defeated. I mean, that's not like that with Owen. Owen is just he's so earnest and sincere and good-hearted, even though he wants his mother dead. But you can't blame him because, again, I mean, Anne Ramsey does such a great job of making it. And the thing is, and I didn't mention this one but she does such a great job of the pathos. There's those scenes early on where she does. I mean, as much as she denigrates and belittles Owen, she also, it's like when he cleans out her ear, she says, "I don't know what I'd do without you." There's a scene where she almost dies, and she's hugging him and crying, and so you get it's fascinating how she's on the screen for like all 10 minutes, and yet she does such a good job of both making clear why Owen would want to kill her, and also making clear why Owen at the end of the day just chooses not to kill her, and they're both equally believable. And a little wonder she got an Oscar nomination for that performance.
Oh, yeah. No, I think she was very believable. In the beginning, before you did see those scenes you were talking about, I really was like, oh, please, throw her off that train before she hits him with another skillet.
Yeah.
I was on Owen's side the whole time.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, too, Owen didn't present the evil that Bruno did. You really wanted Owen. He wasn't doing a bad thing. Bruno really wanted to kill somebody. I think Owen was helping a friend more than he was planning a murder. You know what I'm saying? He was doing it because he wanted to be good to Larry. He was helping Larry.
I hadn't really thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's awesome. It's fascinating considerations that ultimately it's more about him trying to build a friendship with Larry than necessarily killing his mother. That's just the excuse. And then when it actually reaches the moment of culmination, he realizes that's not what he really wants. Right. But he still feels like he has this great friendship with Larry. Huh.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's another point that that stood out, and this is where you and I had a bit of disagreement, Aaron, and it's to the notion of what a MacGuffin is.
Yeah, well, go ahead. I'll correct anything if I need to.
This goes to a point that I can't take credit for this. This was actually a point that that Roger Ebert made when he was talking about Throw Momma from the Train, when he originally reviewed 1987, which is that one of the things that stood out for him, and this is something I didn't appreciate when I had just seen Throw 'Em Off for the Train, but after seeing the two, I got more, which is that the notion of the MacGuffin, is credited to Alfred Hitchcock, and it's something that you see in Throw 'Em Off for the Train, and Ebert's argument is that the MacGuffin isn't a thing, an object. It is instead a device, and the device in this case is the murder plot. And
okay. So the thing that they want is to kill the other person.
yes,
Okay. Yeah, that works as a MacGuffin.
and whereas in Strangers on Train, it is about how the characters are responding to this, how Bruno is eager to the point of desperation, how Guy is pressured to the point of desperation, and how Anne is worried from. They're all reacting to it. You don't get as much of that in Throw Momma from the Train. The characters don't really develop, and I think it's just maybe a little bit with Owen in terms of his his self discovery of that he doesn't really want his mother dead. But does Larry really grow as a character?
Yeah, no, he's the same from the beginning to the end.
Or Beth.
Well, he gets rid of his writer's block, but that's about it.
Yeah, and that's not so much of a.
It's not a character
growth.
change.
So, and so there, I think what you're seeing there, I think, is how challenging it can be to get the MacGuffin right, and in that Hitchcock, who as the originator of it, he knew what he wanted to do with it, and that was it is the device that drives the story, but is not the center of it. And what they do in Throw 'Em Off for the Train, as entertaining as it is they tend to lose sight of that, and it's all about the murder plot and carrying it out in comedic ways.
The character development's not the same.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So
DeVito is basically the Bruno stand-in, and he's incompetent compared to Bruno, who's actually he gets it done, and he
thinks he does.
But DeVito barely manages to kill her, and he's not really a good writer. Lots of different things. He's not really a scary character, is what I'm getting at. There's no tension like there is with Bruno.
Yeah.
You get that nicely established in the first sequence where he tries to kill his mother with the lie and the Pepsi, where you see Mama Lift drinking it and then dying, and it turns out that was just Owen's imagination.
Yeah.
As Mama Lift's about to drink it, Owen slaps it out of her hand.
That was cool, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Bruno's malicious. I don't think Owen is malicious at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at with that. I think it might have worked better comedy-wise had you had that tension, because it's the second half just felt limp for me, where he has to kill Mama. The only thing really keeping him there is the fear that the police are going to get him.
Yeah.
But Owen in general is not a force to be reckoned with, where he's like, you have to do this thing. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it has much push behind it.
The closest you get that, I think, is the scene in the kitchen when the police are there and Owen is...
That's funny.
Yeah, it is none too subtly threatening to expose Larry and
see that works because you've got the tension of the police being directly there.
But even then, it's played for laughs.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm talking about though. Like the same thing that you could use for suspense, you switch it and look at it through a different lens, and it's comedy.
Yeah.
In fact, most comedies are suspense movies. If you look at it, they're Mistaken Identity, like Mrs. Doubtfire, where it's the fear that the secret's going to come out, that he's not this English maid. He's actually the dad that wants to see his kids.
Oh, I love when his boobs catch on fire. Oh my God, that was genius, sheer genius.
Yeah, there's lots of comedy movies. Anything with Mistaken Identity is a suspense movie.
Is.
Like my mom's favorite romantic comedy is While You Were Sleeping, and she gets mistaken for being the fiance of this guy that's in a coma, and when he wakes up, like you feel the tension of it, of, oh no, he's going to reveal that she's not and then it becomes, oh, he's got amnesia. And I love that movie because it's ironic, since this is based off of a Hitchcock movie. They don't really, except for a few scenes, play the suspense for the comedy. There's not really the tension line of the suspense holding it up. But
I think for me, the first comedy I think of when I think of suspense is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh.
Which, if you haven't seen it,
you have to remind me of the premise of that. I've seen it.
It's with Michael Caine and Steve Martin, and Michael Caine plays a con artist in the French Riviera, and how this American con artist played by Steve Martin shows up. And initially, the tension is Caine trying to get rid of Martin. And then when Martin figures out who Caine is, he tries to become Caine's understudy. And it works for a while, but then Martin gets tired of it, and then they have a contest to see who is the better grifter. And it centers around their ability to grift this woman who's supposed to be this heiress to the soap fortune, and they're trying to find a way to grift her fortune out of her, and they adopt these different personas and they're put in these different situations. It's so well done.
It is.
Yeah.
It's even more well done because
convoluted. It's like you're not even sure what layer you're in at one point. You know,
exactly.
It's like, ooh.
But it's constantly changing. Will Cain's character get rid of Martin's character, and then it's the who's going to win this contest, and then they change the contest, and there's this neat little twist later on that and it really is. I mean, it's fascinating.
Recommended. You should watch
it. I've seen it. I just didn't remember what happened.
It's especially fascinating because Caine is not a known for being a comedic actor, unlike Martin, and yet he does.
Oh, he's great at it.
He's so good at it.
The thing about comedy that isn't understood is if you just play the character straight, like you're gonna get it. If it's written funny and like within the character of the characterization of what it's supposed to be, if the character just plays it straight, it'll be funny.
And that gets to again to my issue with Billy Crystal's performance is that he didn't get that note.
Yeah,
he thought he had to be
definitely.
He had to be a comedic character. I mean, he played a good Billy Crystal character, but what that needed was a straight person.
Yeah.
It didn't need. I mean, it was. I felt like I was getting a version of his character from The Princess Bride, but without the makeup.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of, over the top.
And it's just really annoying because he's just basically his character is just calling his ex-wife a slut all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay.
It was like watching his character in Princess Bride. What was it called? Like, not Magic Mike. That's different movie altogether.
Oh wow! Yeah, let's go there.
That one. Miracle Max.
Miracle Max. Thank you. Yeah, he's playing Miracle Max. When he's going around talking about Humperdinck. Oh, that swine. It was the same basic thing. Only he was using the word slut. And it was just And I guess that's what it just didn't really fit, especially given the sweet tone that DeVito was providing with Owen. So, one last thing that stood out for me as a commonality is the role that accidents play in both movies. And this is more of a subplot point, and again you can point to maybe some similarities, but it is also fascinating to see how the role that they use accidents in terms of driving the plot. It starts with Guy accidentally leaving his letter behind in Strangers on a Train, and then you have that accident at the climax where the merry-go-round operators go. At least you hope it's an accident. It's not some police officer is like, that guy ripped me off last week, and I'm going to have my chance to even the score. And then in Throw Momma from the Train, you have Margaret, falling off the boat, as we find out in retrospect accidentally, and then you have a series of car accidents that take place throughout the movie that again are help to propel the plot forward.
I just want to pick up something that I didn't get when we went over it. The one where the brakes don't work in the car, where he borrowed it from his friend. before he figures out that the brakes don't work, he speeds up real quick. He's like, I forget what his line was, but this is a thing that my brother does a lot, where he's like, I'm driving, oh, kill us.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's just interesting how both of them use not accidents as a way of as key plot developments.
Yeah, for sure.
And very different ways.
And it works as long as it's for the negative, because if it goes against your characters, anything is game. That's a Pixar rule, actually. If there's a coincidence that helps your character, don't use that.
Yeah.
If there's a coincidence that goes against your character,
That's what
it's
you
fair
want,
game.
yeah.
Just go ahead and use it. But yeah, these movies use that rule like crazy. So I want to get into the structure of the two movies. Okay, so this might be what kind of sullied the second one, in my opinion. It's kind of looser on the structure. The inciting incident for Strangers on a Train, where they talk about the crisscross and the switching of the murders, doesn't happen till the midpoint of Throw Momma from a Train. So it's a lot of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's flab or what, but it just didn't feel as structurally sound as the first one, because it's
The groundwork was
yeah.
not there.
I'm not sure what the actual inciting incident for Throw Momma from a Train is, because I'd have to go back and watch it. But the one that it should be doesn't happen until the middle of the movie. So,
well, I think it's the conversation between the two protagonists, or the protagonist and the antagonist, if you will, regarding the idea of the plot. And you spend a lot of Throw Momma establishing these characters and their lives. It's fascinating how much more efficient the story is in Strangers, because that happens within the first, say, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We learn his people are, hey, you're that tennis celebrity. I've never done anything. I'm just rich. And how you've got your problem with your wife, and I've got my problem with my dad. And hey, we can solve this problem. Whereas you first have to see, Larry ranting at his wife, which apparently they didn't think they did very well, because they then have to repeat that scene like 20 other times in the movie.
yeah.
And then you have Owen with his mother, and it's like, and only then do you get to the point where it's like, hey, maybe we should do the murder, and then it's casual suggestion. Then you have to plant the seed with the movie, and then Owen has the epiphany. So it really does.
It's almost like it has an extended first act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Something that I found interesting too, though, is that Larry and Owen knew each other before any of the, crisscross talk started. They knew each other as things, and yet they had no idea that either one of them had anything other than a perfect life. I mean, you see what I'm saying? In this classroom scene, or scenes, or the classroom life, they were okay. And we didn't see that they weren't okay until we got out of this and got to this, And it did take a while to get there, I agree.
And of course, it involved the teacher oversharing about his personal life, which, as a teacher,
Never,
you never,
ever, never.
Yeah, I'm not going to admit that I actually, they just roll me into a closet at the end of every day and power me down. So,
Oh no, I did think that, like you said, that first, until they got to the crux of the movie, it did take a while.
yeah.
so okay, I'm gonna just splurge a little bit about the structure of
Go ahead.
Strangers on a Train, because it just works perfectly. Like, you've got the opening scene is them talking about the murder, so you've got the concept of what's going to happen. Inciting incident is when he kills her, and then Act 2 starts when Bruno comes back to his house, guy's house, and he's like, guy from the shadows, and you're like, no, don't go there. As soon as he goes there and he tells him what he did, that's the beginning of Act 2, and he's stuck in this trap for the whole middle of the movie. And then when things get their worst, he's forced to have to go try and kill the guy's dad, and it's only right before he does it that you realize, oh, he's not going to do it. And then it turns out that anyway, this is the Dark Night of the Soul moment where it turns out he can't tell his dad, he can't get out of it that way. And Bruno knows that he doesn't want to do it and he's trying to get out of it. And so he's trying to sneak out and he's like, it's okay. I'm not going to shoot you. I'm going to get you some other way. And then Act 3 is the lighter. And I have to admit, I almost stole this wholesale for one of my scripts. But
why not?
Yeah.
After all, they
Yeah.
did it for Throw Mama.
Yeah, really. Everybody does
but
it.
it's in that one they have to go find a mask that is at the crime scene, but it works. Like you have a nice MacGuffin that they both have to race towards. It works pretty well. So, but that is my soapbox for splurging about strangers on a train.
Well, I wonder, as a director, did you notice the different, you said structure of the film, I know what you were talking about, but just the different feel of the two films? Strangers on a Train, much more serene. The sets were very clean, neat, organized. Nothing was neat or clean about Owen's house,
Yeah, it's kind of a mucky feel.
Right, or Larry's apartment. And even just sometimes I say movies make me itch. They just wiggle too much or something. And, Throw Mama from the Train wiggled a lot. There was just things that were just randomly wrong. I mean, but it gave the sense of the disorganization of both of their lives,
Yeah, that's true.
But and I thought Strangers was just so perfect. Everybody's house was perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bruno's
And
mom was nuts, but she still was dressed nice. So,
all those characters seem to have it together more. Of the one's the main character is a famous tennis star, and his
very
fiance's
beautiful
dad is a senator, and even the bad guy lives in this really nice house that his
But Guy
father
does seem
has.
to be a little disheveled as the movie goes along, especially when he has to leave directly from a tennis match to
there
go.
he was.
And it's
He
the
was
sense
coming
of how,
uncorked.
conflicting with Bruno because they might have had perfectly ordered lives for themselves,
Yeah.
but in that conflict they were becoming disheveled. And you see that a bit. It's subtle. I don't even know if it's necessarily intentional, but you do see that near the end.
And that may have been intentional, that you could start to see their edges fray.
Exactly.
Because they were getting to that point. I don't know. Good point.
That's a really good thing I didn't notice. That would come to the production designer who designs the sets, and it's really it grows out from character. Like you making a senator's house, it's going to be a lot different than the house of this elderly lady and his son that it hasn't gone anywhere in his life.
Did he even have a job? I never got a job.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I don't either.
That was his original complaint to Guy, which was that his father was pressing him. And I think the line
I was talking about
selling
Owen.
beans.
Yeah, I was talking about Owen.
Owen.
Yeah, did Owen have a job?
That's an excellent point because he didn't have a job, but somehow he had the money to fly to Hawaii and drive around and do all this stuff. So, and of course, he had the money for a standing reservation at a bowling alley.
Yeah.
So,
and he had plenty of money for those payphones too.
I mean, maybe he was living off of his mother's Social Security checks.
Maybe.
So.
I think as a director too, I look at different things sometimes. Than just people do. They don't think about the technicality part of it. How hard was it to light this, or how hard was the sound to get, or how dangerous was that? What did like you said that
The carousel thing.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that till you said it, and I thought, oh my gosh.
Most of those were rear projection. Any of the ones that you see them on the carousel looking off, they've just got a projector screen behind it. But the wide shots would have been more dangerous. The one where the carousel flies off its hinges might have even been a model, but if it wasn't, there weren't any people on it.
But the guy going under that was real because
that was spooky.
He had nowadays it would be really easy just to slap a green screen over top of him and do that. But he actually had to be close to that spinning carousel. So now we're going to do our star ratings for both movies. So, Strangers on a Train, Mark, what would you give it?
That's for me. It's a 4-star movie. I mean, it's close to 5. I'd probably have to watch it again, but I really do feel it. I after watching it, I'm surprised it doesn't get the attention it deserves. I feel like I mean, I know this is going to be heretical, and you might want, for my safety, to take it out, but I think Vertigo's a little overrated. And to me, maybe this film should be, maybe not where Vertigo is, but maybe it should be kind of in that top tier to, counterbalance.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what would you give it, Tommy?
Well, I'm kind of inclined to agree with Mark, probably about a 4. But I wonder if it didn't. Now, this is just someone that's quite a bit older than you are. The star power wasn't quite what it was in some of his other movies, I don't think. Because you got to remember, that was 57, I think.
No,
51.
51.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even better. That's even better.
Farley Granger was the biggest star,
Yeah,
and
that's what
he
I
was
mean.
he wasn't on the same level as, say, a Cary Grant.
You think? I'm thinking back to 51. I don't recall his name being quite as a household word as.
Oh, it wasn't. That's my
Yeah.
point. Is that, I mean,
Yeah.
he was the biggest name, and yet it wasn't.
and
that
he
big a
wasn't,
name.
yeah.
Leo G. Carroll. He's not going to become famous until he does Man from U.N.C.L.E. in the 1960s.
So maybe that's it. Maybe it just didn't have the star power to get the attention that it really deserves. I think. Can we do halves? I would even go 4.5.
Okay.
I really liked it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give it a 4.5 too.
I'm the one. I've got this weird, thing about I don't do halves. I have to.
Yeah.
I try not to sit on that fence. I have to choose one or the other. So
I like to see it as it gives the nuance of you got 10 spots rather than 5. But anyway, I really want to give it 5, and I have given it 5 in the past, but I need to give space for movies being more. If it were just from my favoriteness of it, I would say 5. Act 2, I felt was not as. I don't know. I really remember Act 3 a lot from this movie. The lighter scene and of course the murder from Act 1 and the whole crisscross setup. But Act 2, I felt like there wasn't as much, so that's why I'd go down half a star. But aside from that, it's, I don't know, it's a classic, or it should be a classic.
it is. It's funny how people remember the crisscross part. They remember a couple other elements of it, but it just doesn't stand out as a capital H Hitchcock movie the way that, say, The Birds or Saboteur or something like that is.
Yeah.
I think the tennis match was really good to me too, because he was playing out of his comfort zone and all that. But then you're thinking, okay, just one more shot. That's all you got. Then there would be, the other guy would get one, and just the way that they used the match itself to just make you just start clawing the seat.
Yeah.
And I think the particular sport helped because with the thwack of the balls, it was like a clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whack, whack,
Yeah.
whack. And
That's good.
And it was. I remember thinking that the first time I watched it, and then I didn't bother to put it down a note. Otherwise, I would have mentioned it. But it was something I noticed that time too. It kind of gave you the sense as to how time's passing while.
And the crowd. I mean, everything about that scene was, I thought, very well done, very suspenseful.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's do our star ratings of Throw Momma from a Train. Mark.
3 stars. I mean, I'd give it 4, but for that Billy Crystal performance, which really knocks it down for me because it's a little discordant from what the film needed. But other than that, I mean, it was, the tone was great. Anne Ramsey, I don't know who beat her out for an Oscar, but it must have been a really awesome performance. Really just that, perpetual discrimination against comedy that you see in the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Danny DeVito was great. Even like the smaller performances, Kate Mulgrew, she was, she became someone that you kind of wanted to hate, but at the same time, you could also understand why people were kind of like, just get over it. She's not that evil.
Yeah.
and like the supporting cast of the class, it was just really well done.
Okay, Tommy.
I think I'm going to go with 4 because I don't think Crystal is as strong a comedic actor as he thinks he is. I think he's a good actor, but I don't know. He doesn't come off to me as being a real strong comedic actor, whereas DeVito is. And I think DeVito and Ann Ramsey just made me. I enjoyed it. I really did, and it just didn't quite have the power that Strangers did. So I got to go with the 4.
I want to say this about Crystal is the fact that the one thing I enjoy about the fact that I find his performance grating is that it makes his suffering in the movie more enjoyable. Like when he's getting whacked in the head with a frying pan or going down the steps and slamming into a hot water heater. Yeah. It does make it just makes it that much funnier.
Yeah. Okay, so this might be a little bit disappointing, but I'm going to give it a 2.5. I don't know. It just didn't hit me. Like it might have been the structure that was flabby. Like it seems like, oh, that shouldn't matter for a comedy. For comedy, it matters even more. Like you've got to have that tension to it of that nice. If they would have structured it the same as the original, I think it might have been stronger. Although I don't know if it could sustain an entire movie of the shenanigans of trying to kill Momma. But I don't know. It just seemed like a weird movie. I didn't connect with it. I think the strongest thing about it was Owen and the Momma relationship. And maybe Billy Crystal was the part that just didn't work for me. But because he is that through line of the main character for the whole thing, and it wasn't a very taut line.
Billy Crystal, I feel like he shows people what he can do the next year with When Harry Met Sally. Yeah, and I think when he does it to a degree, I think in City Slickers as well. So he has it. It's just that maybe
I think it comes down to the writing for this one, honestly, and the way that it's. Crystal doesn't play it as a straight man. You hit that right on the head. That's why his acting doesn't work for this one.
Although we also have to wonder to what degree he was improvising with that character. Because what he does in it is so, for lack of a better word, Crystal-esque. And that's why I'm wondering, to what, how much latitude was he given there, or was he really playing? It's difficult to imagine any other actor having that dialogue, let alone delivering it the way that he does. Yeah.
And I've seen this on sets where, at least once, that one actor is the straight man and he's like, oh, I don't have any of the funny lines. It's like, no, you're the straight man. That's what you're supposed to be doing. It's like, yeah, but I want to get laughs too. It's like...
it's the Bud Abbott dilemma.
Yeah. Anyway, but... and maybe I had too high expectations of what movie it was pulling from, but there were a couple scenes that I really appreciated, though, and that pantry scene was one of them.
Yes,
they really play the suspense well in that scene, and for comedy's sake, and I don't know. I'll leave it on that because it's a positive note. But okay. So, Tommy,
yes.
Do you have anything coming up that you'd want to?
Well, I actually do. I have just gotten a book published, and it's getting some pretty good reviews. I am surprised at some of the reviews it's getting because I've been in a lot of book clubs, ladies' book clubs, that kind of thing, over the years. And I sort of wrote it with that in mind. But it's called Washing Worms. Yes, Washing Worms. The first time I Googled it, I got some very strange things. I think, Google has straightened out now. You Google Washing Worms and you get the front of the book. And I'm very proud of the work. I've written a lot of other things. I've written stage plays. I've written movie scripts and things like that. But this is my first book. And... they did not want me to use my own cover, but I designed my cover, and I really am proud of it. It tells the story. Almost the whole story is right there in the cover if you look closely. But it is about a Southern child growing up in Arkansas. That is the South. on an island. And someone said, there's no islands in Arkansas. Yes, there was. There is no longer. They built a levee and cut it off, so it no longer is an island, but it was a horseshoe lake and the Arkansas River that made an island. And this child grew up on that island, and it really did color the way she saw the world, because she really didn't see any world but on that island truly until she started school. Mm-hmm. And even then, it was still an extremely isolated place. So I just wanted to tell people that it's out there. It's a very Hallmark type of book. Anybody can read it. There are some dark moments, but they are life moments. But there's nothing in it that anybody can't read. So, if you want a good read, and it's short. I knew my college students wouldn't read a long book, so it's very short. And
as a college or previous college student, I can attest to that.
But, and I love to talk about it. If you hear this and would like me to come speak to your group, whatever your group is, just contact Aaron. He'll tell you how to get up with me. and that's basically what I got going on now.
Cool. So that was a really fun episode. We'll be glad to have you back on sometime, Tommy.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. I surely enjoyed it.
So our next episode will be Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That's the first Harry Potter. And Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is the third. And it'll be with the cinematographer from Time Haunt, Stefan
Strand.
Yeah, Stefan Strand.
I love Stefan.
And that'll be a fun episode. And that's it for today's Crisscross Cinema Podcast.
You wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.